Day 3, the TED Talk portion of our Leadership Summit. I'm so excited. My name is Alyssa Brown, and I'd like to start by saying that it takes a ton of chutzpah to come up here and talk to you guys. And it is not easy. I want you guys to keep a couple of things in mind tonight as you hear your participants talk. Remember, not only are they future leaders, but these are your peers. We have twice as many ears as we have mouths, so please keep all side conversations to a minimum. And remember, don't just hear, really listen to what they're saying, and see if you can see some of yourselves in their talks. What they're doing tonight requires bravery, passion, and a hell of a lot of courage. So, without further ado, let's get this party started, okay? Our first presenter is Wollberg. And Eric's presentation is entitled Sequestration Nation. And it took me about 6 tries to be able to say that. So, here we go.
Government fellow, interning at the Israel Innovation Authority in the Clean Tech Unit. So my talk is entitled Israel, the Sequestration Nation. So tonight what I am going to be talking to you about is sequestering CO2 and creating an industry around that and how Israel can play a role. For those of you who don't know what sequestering CO2 from the atmosphere is, I want you to think of it if greenhouse gas emissions, lowering them by using clean technologies is the yin of solving global climate change, then sequestering CO2 from the atmosphere is the yang of solving that problem. So Helen Keller once said that it is a terrible thing to see and have no vision. Now this is kind of how I got involved in this topic. I saw, like many of you, the news, the media that's telling us that we have an imminent crisis on our hands, global climate change, and there is absolutely no vision, whether from our politicians, our titans of industry, our pop stars, of how to solve this problem. And that got to me. That kept me up at night. It made me upset in the morning. And I realized that the only way that I was ever going to be able to get over this is if I took part in trying to solve that problem. So just to contextualize this for you, I want you to think about the story of Adam and Eve. We all know in that story that Adam and Eve, eats from the tree of knowledge, and this gets them cast out from the Garden of Eden. And I thought about, what if we could flip that around? You know, we're destroying our Eden here on earth. What if we could use the very thing that got Adam and Eve cast out to recreate our Eden here on earth? Knowledge. So what's the problem? It's the climate, stupid. So here's the problem why I think it's not enough just to switch to renewable energy. You have to sequester the CO2 that we've already emitted to the atmosphere back out. Because all we have right now is the Paris Agreement. What does the Paris Agreement have you do? It wants us to keep our warming under 2 degrees centigrade of warming. Now, 2 degrees centigrade of warming still leaves us with a huge problem, guys. 24% of the population will have reduced access to groundwater by 2080 at 2 degrees centigrade. 100-year flood instances will affect a quarter of the world's population. And what will this lead to? Enormous amounts of migration. And I want you to think about Israel in particular. It is a land bridge. It is a land bridge between the poor and developing countries in Africa and the rich developed countries in Europe. And how will they get there if they need to flee? Through Israel. So what are the solutions that exist today? It's not all blue, and there are some people trying to figure this out. So we have carbon capture on site. So this is when you're at a coal plant. While you're creating the CO2, you're capturing that CO2. Now that costs $120 per ton. You have ambient capture from Climeworks. It's a company in Switzerland. That's what you see over there. Now they use fans, turbines, to capture the ambient air and take the carbon dioxide out of that. Now that's $1,000 per ton. And right now their biggest facility is only able to take out 900 tons per year. And after you have that CO2, there's a company in Iceland that is pumping that CO2 underground. Now I want you to think about this: $120 per ton and $1,000 per ton. We are currently emitting 36 gigatons, 36 billion tons of CO2 to the atmosphere. Multiply either one of those numbers by that, and you realize that this is not something that's economically viable today. So more work needs to be done. So this is where Israel comes in. This is the country that made the desert bloom. It is the country that took salt water and turned it into fresh water. 51% of Israeli startup companies today are currently creating a category all on their own. True pioneers in whatever it is that they're doing, and this is the kind of attitude that we're going to need in order to tackle this. Expertise that Israel has. So here you have membranes, desalination, turning salt water into fresh water. I want you to think, instead of salt water going in and fresh water coming out, air with CO2 going in and air without CO2 coming out. They also have an incredibly developed aerospace industry, one of the best in the world, UAVs, for example. Now I think if you think back to the ambient capture technology using turbines, that their ability to make these turbines more efficient, this is something that's also a competitive advantage for Israel. Chemical engineering, guys, the Weizmann Institute, Tel Aviv University, Technion, Jerusalem U. These are some of the best chemical engineers in the world. These are the people that are going to need to figure out, what do you do with the carbon dioxide once you capture it? And you see in this chart, this is the connections that entrepreneurs have to the global market. Now, I don't know if you can see, so you have Silicon Valley, the biggest circle, and to the right of that is Tel Aviv, which means, and why is this? Now, this is because Israel is a small domestic market. They have to think globally from day one. And you're going to want and need globally facing companies in order to tackle a global problem. So this is something that they have a comparative advantage in once again. What should the goal be? So Climeworks, that Swiss company, they have a goal of sequestering 1% of global emissions by 2025. Now for me, and I think for the Israelis, that's not good enough. The country that made the desert bloom, the country that turned salt water into fresh water, the country that was itself a startup just 70 years ago, can strive to do better. I want to finish with this. We're at war with ourselves. We're at war with the perfection, our intelligence, our industry, our capabilities. But we do not need weapons of destruction for this war. What we need is weapons of salvation. And I think Israel will be the place to do it. Thank you, guys.